how Shepard laughs his ass off.
I gotta hand it to you.
Perfect mate for Dr. Brace. I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Hollywood has spent billions of dollars making you believe that science fiction means explosions, alien invasions, and cities getting destroyed in slow motion. And it worked. Those movies made fortunes. But somewhere along the way, different kinds of sci-fi got completely buried. Films that treated the audience like they actually had a brain. Films built on real physics, real genetics, real mathematics, and real questions about what it means to be human. And here's the thing, almost nobody saw these underrated gems. Not because they were bad, because the system was never designed to reward movies that make you think harder than they make you cheer. So today we're digging into 15 hard science fiction films that were ignored, underestimated, or flat out abandoned by the industry that created them. And trust me, every single one of them deserved way more than what it got. Number 15, Europa Report, 2013. In 2013, a group of filmmakers did something that almost never happens in Hollywood. They called NASA. This time, not for a logo placement, not for a quick consultant credit. They actually sat down with scientists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and asked them to help build an entire movie around what a real mission to Jupiter's moon Europa would actually look like. The result was Europa Report, and almost nobody saw it. The film follows 6 astronauts on the first crewed mission to Europa, where a subsurface ocean beneath miles of ice might harbor extraterrestrial life. And here's the thing, the surface of the moon used in this film was modeled directly from JPL maps and real NASA data. The communication delays between the crew and Earth were accurate to real physics. When systems fail, the crew responds the way actual astronauts are trained to respond, with autonomous fault handling and calm procedure, not Hollywood screaming. During production, Ecuadorian director Sebastián Cordero shot the entire film with a found footage approach that made the confined spacecraft feel claustrophobic and real. The creature at the end was designed to be bioluminescent, modeled on actual deep-sea organisms, because the science team insisted that any life near Europa's hydrothermal vents would generate its own light. Europa Report opened and earned an 81% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and praise from actual astrobiologists, but it barely registered at the box office. No wide theatrical release, no major marketing push. It came and went like a transmission from deep space that nobody was listening for. Number 14, The Andromeda Strain, 1971.
I have risked drowning in that foul bath. I have been parboiled, irradiated, and xenon.
Before Jurassic Park, before Westworld, before Michael Crichton became the name that guaranteed Hollywood a franchise, there was a quiet little film in 1971 that proved science itself could carry an entire thriller without a single monster, car chase, or explosion. The Andromeda Strain was the first major Crichton adaptation to hit the screen. The story is deceptively simple. A military satellite crashes in a small New Mexico town. Everyone in the town dies except a crying infant and an old man who drinks too much. The production budget was $6.5 million. What makes the film extraordinary is what it refuses to do. There are no villains. There is no love interest. There is no action sequence. The entire film is about scientists working, suiting up, going through decontamination, analyzing samples, arguing about methodology, and slowly unraveling the nature of a crystalline alien microorganism that mutates faster than they can study it. The lab equipment on screen was real. The decontamination protocols were modeled on actual government biosafety procedures. The production spent significant money building elaborate multi-level underground sets that made the wildfire laboratory feel genuinely functional. In fact, the film was among the first major productions to use computerized visual effects for its data displays and sequencing readouts, years before most audiences had any concept of what a computer could even do on a movie screen. When the Andromeda Strain opened, it earned $12.5 million domestically and received strong critical praise. Number 13, Capricorn One, 1977.
It's at this point that Alan Hale says to Richard Conte,
Peter Hyams was a journalist before he became a filmmaker, and that background gave him something most directors lack: a deep, bone-level suspicion of what people are told versus what is actually true. In the early 1970s, while covering the Apollo missions for CBS News, Hyams noticed something that bothered him. Much of what viewers saw on television during those broadcasts was not live footage from space. It was a simulated animation produced in a studio in St. Louis. That single observation became the seed of Capricorn One. The film was produced by ITC Entertainment with an estimated budget of around $5 million. The The film stars Elliot Gould as a journalist who begins to notice inconsistencies in the televised footage of a manned Mars mission. What he does not know yet is that the entire landing was staged in a desert hangar because NASA discovered a fatal flaw in the life support system weeks before launch. Behind the scenes, the production team shot the desert survival sequences in the actual California desert, using real locations to ground the escape in physical believability. Hal Holbrook played the NASA administrator who orchestrates the cover-up with cold, bureaucratic precision. The film's visual effects team worked to make the faked Mars footage look convincingly real on screen, while also subtly flawed enough that an alert viewer could spot the staging, mirroring the conspiracy theory logic that drives the entire plot. Capricorn One earned solid box office returns, pulling in over $12 million domestically on a modest budget. The film quietly disappeared from mainstream conversation as Star Wars consumed everything in its path. Number 12. Outland, 1981.
I'll see you around.
In the summer of 1980, Sean Connery was not James Bond anymore. He had spent years trying to outrun that shadow, searching for roles that carried genuine weight without the tuxedo and the gadgets. He was one of the most bankable movie stars on the planet. He could have done anything. Instead, he chose to star in a grimy, sweaty science fiction film set inside a mining colony on one of Jupiter's moons, where the corridors looked like industrial plumbing and nobody had seen sunlight in years. That film was Outland, and it was deliberately designed to be the opposite of everything audiences expected from space movies at the time. Behind the scenes, the production team built the mining colony Con-Am 27 from the ground up on Pinewood's vast stages, constructing a world of corroded metal corridors, industrial squalor, and claustrophobic dread that made viewers feel like they were already trapped alongside Connery's Marshall O'Neill before the first scene was over. And here's the thing. Outland was the first motion picture to use introvision, a variation on front projection that allowed foreground, midground, and background elements to be combined in camera rather than through optical blue screen matting. It was a genuine technical innovation, pioneered for a film that most critics would later describe as merely derivative. Director Peter Hyams, who had already explored institutional deception in Capricorn One, pushed hard for physical realism in the production design. The sets were constructed to feel functional rather than cinematic. Pipes ran along walls. Living quarters were cramped. The mess hall looked like a place where exhausted people ate terrible food under bad lighting. The decompression sequences were shot practically with prosthetic effects that still look uncomfortable to watch today. Outland opened and earned approximately $17 million at the box office. Number 11. Enemy Mine, 1985. Here is a production story that almost sounds like fiction. A major studio authorizes a science fiction film about a human and an alien soldier stranded on a hostile planet, forced to survive together despite being at war. The premise is powerful. The source material is exceptional. The director attached is Richard Loncraine. The cast is confirmed. Production begins with a budget of $18 million. Then, after roughly 3 weeks of shooting in Iceland and Budapest, executives become alarmed. The alien makeup looks cheap. The planet looks like Earth. The dailies are a disaster. The production is shut down. The director is fired. And the film that was supposed to be a lean $18 million project transforms into something else entirely. During production, director Wolfgang Petersen came onto the project after the original director was replaced and significant footage was scrapped, forcing a near-complete restart. Petersen relocated production to the Bavaria Film Studios in Munich. The alien planet looks genuinely otherworldly. The Drac makeup achieved something rare in 1985. It was expressive enough for an Oscar-caliber performance to breathe through it. And that is exactly what happened. Gossett managed to convey a great breadth of emotions under heavy prosthetic makeup, with alien head movements, body language, and vocalizations that he developed himself, including a distinctive gurgling speech pattern he invented from childhood and performed entirely without post-production assistance. Enemy Mine earned just over $14 million at the domestic box office against a final cost of $40 million, making it one of the bigger losses on Fox's books that year. Number 10. Brainstorm, 1983. Natalie Wood died on November 29, 1981. She drowned off the coast of Catalina Island under circumstances that have been investigated, debated, and reopened for over 4 decades. At the time of her death, she was in the middle of filming a science fiction movie called Brainstorm, and the studio nearly killed the movie too. MGM wanted to shut the production down entirely and collect the insurance money. Director Douglas Trumbull fought to save the film. He argued that Wood had completed most of her scenes and that the story could be finished with careful restructuring. The battle between Trumbull and MGM became one of the ugliest director versus studio conflicts of the era. The budget was estimated at $16 million. Everything was in place. Christopher Walken plays a scientist who invents a device that can record and play back complete human experiences. Every sensation, every emotion, every thought. The implications are staggering, and the film knows it. Behind the scenes, Trumbull shot the recorded experience sequences in 70mm Super Panavision to create a wider, more immersive image, while the real-world scenes were shot in standard 35mm. The shift between formats was designed to make the audience physically feel the difference between ordinary life and recorded consciousness. Louise Fletcher plays a colleague who secretly records her own fatal heart attack, and the sequence where Walken's character experiences her death through the headset remains one of the most unsettling scenes in 1980s science fiction. The film's budget was substantial for the time, but the combination of production delays, the studio battle, and the public's discomfort with a film connected to real tragedy meant Brainstorm never had a fair chance. Brainstorm underperformed at the box office and quickly faded from conversation, earning just $6 million. Number 9. Strange Days, 1995. James Cameron began developing the story for Strange Days in 1985. He had just made The Terminator. He had Aliens ahead of him. But somewhere in between those blockbusters, he was constructing something darker, more personal, and considerably more dangerous. The story centered on a black market dealer in Los Angeles who traffics in recorded human experience, essentially bootleg memories you can plug directly into your brain. Cameron wrote the 90-page treatment practically as a novel, then brought in screenwriter Jay Cox to structure it, and later did a dialogue polish himself. He had always written it with one person in mind to direct it, not himself, but Kathryn Bigelow. Bigelow's direction is relentless. The first-person point-of-view sequences were shot with a custom-built, lightweight camera rig that allowed the operator to move freely through physical spaces, creating an immersive effect that feels disturbingly close to modern virtual reality headset footage. The production spent heavily on practical sets, recreating a chaotic Millennium Eve Los Angeles, with riot sequences staged using hundreds of extras and extensive pyrotechnics. Cameron and co-writer Jay Cox built the screenplay around themes of voyeurism, consent, and the human addiction to mediated experience. The violence in the film is not gratuitous, but it is deeply uncomfortable, particularly a sequence involving a recorded assault that Bigelow deliberately staged to make the audience feel complicit in watching. Strange Days opened in October 1995 and grossed under $8 million domestically against its $42 million budget. It was not just a box office failure, it was a massacre. Number 8. Dark Star, 1974. Before John Carpenter became the man who terrified the world with Halloween and The Thing, he was a film student at the University of Southern California, scraping together whatever money he could find to make a movie about bored astronauts drifting through deep space on a mission to destroy unstable planets. That movie was Dark Star, and it started life as a 45-minute student thesis film made for roughly $6,000. In fact, when Dark Star caught attention on the festival circuit, producer Jack H. Harris put up additional funding to expand it to feature length, bringing the total budget to approximately $60,000. The film follows the crew of the scout ship Dark Star, 20 years into a mission that has ground their sanity down to nothing. During productions, one crew member has become so detached from reality that he spends his time sunbathing under a radiation lamp. Another keeps a pet alien in the cargo bay that looks like a painted beach ball and behaves like an aggressive house cat. And then there is the bomb. Bomb number 20 is a thermostellar device designed to be dropped into unstable planets, and it has developed a mind of its own. The sequence where one of the crew members attempts to talk the bomb out of detonating by engaging it in a philosophical debate about phenomenology and the nature of sensory perception is one of the most original scenes in the entire history of science fiction. Number 7. Dark City, 1998. In 1998, a film was released that explored the nature of reality, memory, and identity through a visually stunning story about a man who wakes up in a world where nothing is what it seems. That film was Dark City, and it arrived in theaters a full year before Neo ever dodged a bullet. Directed by Alex Proyas, Dark City was an ambitious, noir-infused science fiction film with a production budget of approximately $27 million. The production design is extraordinary. The city itself was constructed as massive practical sets at Fox Studios in Sydney, blending 1940s noir architecture with expressionist angles and perpetual darkness. Buildings shift and reshape during sequences called tuning, where the strangers restructure reality while the population sleeps. Behind the scenes, the visual effects team combined practical miniatures with early digital compositing to create these transformation sequences, and the result still looks hauntingly unique. Kiefer Sutherland plays a limping, wheezing doctor who serves the strangers, delivering one of the most eccentric performances of his career. Jennifer Connelly plays the wife Murdoch cannot remember. William Hurt plays a detective slowly unraveling the truth. The cast was strong. The reviews were strong. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars and later selected it for his Great Movies series, calling it one of the most visually ambitious films of the decade. Despite all these, none of it mattered at the box office. Dark City earned approximately $27 million worldwide, barely recouping its production budget before marketing costs. Number 6. Coherence, 2013. Director James Ward Burkett had worked as a storyboard artist on the Pirates of the Caribbean films, earning Hollywood wages on blockbuster productions. But for Coherence, he stripped everything away. No studio, no crew infrastructure, no screenplay for the actors to read in advance. Instead, Burkett gave each actor individual notes before every scene, specific instructions that the others could not see. One actor might be told to subtly lie about where they had just been. Another might be told to become increasingly suspicious of a specific person at the table. The result is a dinner party that gradually unravels as a comet passes overhead and the laws of physics begin to fracture. The film explores quantum decoherence, the idea that parallel realities normally cannot interact. The entire production cost $50,000. Emily Foxler leads the cast with a grounded, increasingly desperate performance that anchors the chaos. Nicholas Brendon brings uncomfortable energy to a character hiding secrets. The improvised dialogue sounds messy and overlapping in exactly the way real human conversation sounds when panic sets in. The entire film was shot by one camera operator using handheld techniques that add to the disorientation without ever feeling like a gimmick. When Coherence opened, it earned $139,000 at the box office during an extremely limited theatrical release. It hit an 88% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And then something remarkable happened. Years after release, the film topped streaming charts in the United States, beating titles with 1,000 times its budget. Number 5. Contact, 1997. Carl Sagan spent years writing the Contact's novel. He even spent more years making sure the film adaptation honored the science. And then he died on December 20th, 1996, 5 months before Contact reached theaters. He never saw the finished version of the story he had poured his life into. That fact alone should tell you everything about what kind of film this is. The cast was staggering. Jodie Foster stars as Dr. Ellie Arroway, an astronomer who has spent her career listening to the sky and being ridiculed for it. Director Robert Zemeckis brought a reported budget of $90 million to the production and spent it meticulously. The visual effects included a groundbreaking sequence where a young Ellie runs upstairs to a medicine cabinet, and the entire shot is revealed to have been a reflection in the mirror. The seamless digital compositing required to execute that single shot pushed the boundaries of what effects houses thought was possible in 1997. Foster delivered what many consider one of her finest performances, portraying a woman whose faith in science is repeatedly tested by a world that demands she prove the unprovable. The radio telescope sequences were modeled on the real Very Large Array in New Mexico, where portions of the film were actually shot. The signal decoding process depicted in the film follows real principles of mathematical communication theory. Contact earned $171 million worldwide, which sounds like a success until you factor in the $90 million production budget and the substantial marketing costs. Warner Brothers considered it a financial disappointment. Number 4. Children of Men, 2006. In 2006, Alfonso Cuarón made a science fiction film set 18 years in the future in which every woman on Earth had become infertile, and humanity was in the final stages of collective collapse. He made it as a Christmas release. Universal Pictures had no idea what to do with it, so they did it rather poorly, releasing one of the most visionary science fiction films of the century into multiplexes without the promotional muscle it needed. And here's the thing, Cuarón shot the film on a budget of approximately $76 million. He committed to a visual approach that changed how action cinema was conceived. The car ambush scene, where attackers swarm a vehicle from a forest road while the camera never cuts, was achieved by building a specially rigged car with a custom camera platform that could swing 360 degrees inside the vehicle while actors performed around it in real time. The sequence at the Bexhill refugee camp near the end of the film is even more staggering. Cuarón staged an extended battle with explosions, gunfire, hundreds of extras, and collapsing buildings in what appears to be a single, unbroken take lasting several minutes. Cinematographer Emanuel Lubezki used digital stitching techniques to connect separate shots into seamless, continuous movement, a method so convincing that audiences and even some critics believed it was genuinely done in one take. Blood splattered onto the camera lens during the Bexhill sequence, and Cuarón kept it in the final cut because removing it would have broken the illusion. Children of Men opened and earned approximately $70 million worldwide. Number 3. Moon, 2009. Sam Rockwell spent weeks alone on a set designed to look like the loneliest place in the solar system, and he made it feel like the loneliest place in cinema. Moon was the directorial debut of Duncan Jones, the son of David Bowie, and it was made for approximately $5 million, which in 2009 would barely cover the catering budget on a major studio sci-fi production. The film takes place on a lunar mining base where Rockwell plays Sam Bell, an astronaut nearing the end of a 3-year solo contract harvesting helium-3 for a clean energy company back on Earth. His only companion is Gertie, the station's artificial intelligence voiced by Kevin Spacey. Behind the scenes, Jones shot the film using practical miniature effects for the lunar surface rather than CGI. The model work was supervised by Bill Pearson, who had built miniatures for Alien and Aliens, giving Moon a tactile, physical quality that digital effects of the same era could not match. The production built a full-scale interior set of the Serang base that Rockwell could physically move through. And then there's Rockwell's fantastic performance. He carries nearly every scene alone, and when the story reveals that Sam is not who he believes he is, Rockwell is tasked with playing multiple versions of the same man in different states of physical and emotional deterioration. Moon earned approximately $10 million worldwide and an 89% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Number 2. Primer, 2004. The entire Primer film was made for $7,000, and somehow it became the most intellectually dense time travel film ever committed to celluloid. Shane Carruth was not a filmmaker when he started. He was a mathematician and a software engineer who had never made a movie in his life. He taught himself screenwriting. He taught himself directing. He taught himself cinematography and editing and music composition. Then he wrote, directed, produced, shot, edited, scored, and starred in Primer over the course of 3 years, working with a skeleton crew of 5 people. He cast his friends and family because he could not find professional actors who could deliver lines about electromagnetic field variations and recursive causality loops without making them sound like a performance. The film was shot on Super 16mm in industrial parks and suburban houses on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. The shooting ratio was 2:1, meaning only 80 minutes of total footage was shot, and 78 minutes made the final cut. There was no room for error because there was no money for a second take. The story follows 2 engineers, Aaron and Abe, who accidentally build a device in a garage that allows limited time travel. The machine is not a glowing portal or a sleek capsule. It is a gray box made of PVC pipes and car parts that hums with the sound of a mechanical grinder. The genius of Primer is that Carruth refuses to simplify anything. The characters speak in the jargon real engineers use. The time travel mechanics follow internal rules so complex that fans have created multi-layered diagrams and academic papers attempting to map every loop, paradox, and divergent timeline in the film. Carruth spent 2 years editing and nearly abandoned the project multiple times. When it finally screened at Sundance in 2004, it won both the Grand Jury Prize and the Alfred P. Sloan Prize for films dealing with science and technology. It went on to gross $545,000 in limited theatrical release. Number 1. Gattaca, 1997. Here's the thing. The title, Gattaca, was derived from the 4 nucleobases of DNA: guanine, adenine, thymine, and cytosine. Initially, the film was shot under a different working title entirely, known as The Eighth Day, but that name had already been taken by a Belgian film by the time the release date approached. So it was renamed using the language of genetics itself. That decision was not accidental. In fact, nothing in Gattaca was accidental. Every frame, every location choice, every costume, every color palette was a deliberate argument about what happens to human beings when their biological data becomes more important than their will. The film was made for a reported production budget of $36 million. It starred Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Jude Law, Alan Arkin, and Gore Vidal, with production design by Jan Rolfs and cinematography by Slawomir Idziak. The production deliberately avoided futuristic set construction, instead using real architecture from across the 20th century, Studebaker Avantis, Barcelona chairs, existing institutional buildings, to suggest a future that had arrived through slow accumulation rather than sudden rupture. The costumes were cold and minimalist. The color grade drained warmth from every interior. During production, Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman fell in love. They married in 1998. When Gattaca opened, it earned $12.5 million at the domestic box office. If even one of these films ends up on your watch list tonight, then this video did exactly what those movies tried to do. It found the right audience, even if it took a little longer than it should have. See you in the next one.